My name is Margaret, and the night I walked into my sister's wedding with the judge at my side was the night everything changed. You could say it began long before that, in the thousand small ways my family made me feel less. But nothing burned like the moment I realized they had hidden the invitation. Not misplaced. Not lost in the mail. Hidden. A deliberate choice to erase me from the most important day of my sister's life. For months, I had listened to whispers about the wedding. Veronica, my sister, boasted of the designer gown, the ballroom filled with chandeliers, the guest list of 200. Everyone was invited, cousins, old neighbors, even family acquaintances I barely remembered. Everyone but me. The silence around me grew louder as the date approached. No card in the mail. No email. No text. My mother dodged my questions, smiling too tightly, her hands folding napkins as if to distract from her lies. My brother brushed me off. "It's a small ceremony," he claimed, though I later learned it was the largest event our family had ever hosted. And then, days before the wedding, I saw it. Veronica's best friend posted a picture of the invitations on social media. Gold foil letters on ivory cardstock, the family name glittering under the light. 200 of them had gone out. My name was not on the list. The truth crushed me. My sister, my blood, had erased me from her wedding day. I sat in my apartment staring at that image, my chest tight, my hands trembling. They wanted me gone. Not just absent but forgotten. A burden not worth a chair at the table. Humiliation washed over me, raw and sharp. But beneath it, something colder began to burn. Rage. A steady fire that refused to be smothered. If they thought they could humiliate me in silence, they were wrong. I would not stay home while they toasted under crystal chandeliers. I would not be erased. The scarf of shame I had carried all my life, the one they wrapped around me with every insult, every dismissal, fell away in that moment. In its place, I wrapped myself in resolve. They wanted me out. I would walk in. They wanted me powerless. I would bring power with me. And so, while Veronica rehearsed her vows, while my family polished silverware and strung lights, I began to plan. I would attend her wedding, yes, but not as the forgotten sister standing in the shadows. I would arrive with the very person they least expected, the judge who held the power to decide an inheritance they had tried to steal from me. The wedding would not end with vows and roses. It would end with revelation. Because while they thought they had hidden my invitation, they had unknowingly prepared the perfect stage for my revenge. And I intended to use it. The wedding invitation was not the only thing my family tried to hide from me. First, I thought it was nothing more than cruelty. A way to humiliate me, to remind me of my place. But as the shock settled into anger, I began to notice patterns. Half-heard conversations. Sudden silences when I entered a room. Whispers cut short over the phone. Something more was happening beneath the laughter and polished lies. The night after I saw the posted invitation online, I called my mother. My voice trembled with fury. "Why wasn't I invited, Mom? Why did Veronica send out 200 invitations but not one to me?" Her pause was long, uncomfortable. "Margaret, don't start trouble. It's Veronica's day. You've always been difficult at gatherings. We thought it best you sit this one out." Difficult? My voice cracked. Or inconvenient? Another pause, sharper this time. "You don't understand the pressure Veronica is under. Her future depends on this marriage. We need everything perfect." Perfect. The word sliced through me. I wasn't perfect enough to sit in the room. Not perfect enough to share in the family celebration. I was an embarrassment to be locked outside. But then she slipped. In her rush to end the call, she said something I wasn't meant to hear. "The judge will be there anyway. That's what matters." The judge. My heart pounded. What did a judge have to do with a wedding? I couldn't let it go. I spent the next day combing through every scrap of information I could find. Social media posts, gossip from distant cousins, anything that hinted at the truth. And then I found it. A tagged photo of Veronica and my brother at a courthouse weeks earlier, smiling far too widely. The caption read, "Paperwork handled. Everything ready for the wedding and beyond." Beyond. I drove to the courthouse the following morning. My stomach churned as I requested public records. My father had passed years ago, leaving behind an estate that was never fully divided. I had assumed foolishly that my share would come in time. But the clerk slid documents across the counter, and my world tilted. My sister and brother had filed petitions to shift ownership of property and accounts, claiming I had waived my rights. Pages bore signatures that looked like mine, but they weren't. I had never signed them. The betrayal cut deeper than any missing invitation. They hadn't just excluded me from a wedding. They had tried to erase me from my father's legacy entirely. I staggered outside, clutching the documents, my breath fogging in the cold air. The pieces fell into place. That was why they didn't want me at the wedding. It wasn't about embarrassment. It was about control. They wanted to seal their scheme in celebration, confident that I was too weak, too forgotten, too absent to stop them. But they had miscalculated. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with the forged paper spread before me. The ink blurred through my tears, but the fury sharpened everything else. They wanted to humiliate me? They wanted to erase me? Then I would step into their perfect ballroom, not as the forgotten sister, but as the storm they never saw coming. Because if the judge was going to be at Veronica's wedding, then so was I, and I would not walk in alone. I would walk in carrying the very evidence that could destroy them. The forged signatures haunted me. My name, written in strokes that weren't mine, tied to documents that could strip me of everything my father intended for me. Each page was a betrayal pressed in black ink. But betrayal alone wouldn't save me. I needed proof. Solid, undeniable proof. The next morning, I returned to the courthouse and asked for certified copies of every petition with my name on it. The clerk raised his eyebrows at the thickness of the stack. "You sure you want all this?" he asked. "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "Every page." Back at home, I spread the documents across my small table. Signatures repeated over and over, each one a distorted version of mine. At a glance, someone could believe them. But I knew the truth. My loops were tighter, my slant cleaner. These were clumsy imitations designed to trick the system. Still, suspicion wasn't enough. I needed expertise. I contacted a handwriting analyst I found online, a woman named Evelyn who had testified in fraud cases. She studied the scans I sent, then called me within a day. "These signatures are forged," she said without hesitation. "I can put that in writing and testify if needed." Relief and fury twisted together inside me. My siblings had gambled that I would never notice. Now I had the first weapon in my arsenal. But documents alone weren't enough. I needed witnesses, voices to counter the lies they would surely spin. That's when I thought of Aunt Clara, my father's sister. She had always been distant from the rest of the family, a woman with sharp eyes who never joined in the mockery. I drove to her house, clutching the copies of the petitions. She opened the door cautiously, her frame small but her gaze unwavering. "Margaret," she said softly, "I wondered when you'd come." Inside, over tea, I laid out everything. The missing invitation, the forged signatures, the plan to erase me. Her face hardened with each word. Finally, she set down her cup. "I knew something was wrong," she said. "Your father confided in me before he died. He wanted you protected. He left specific instructions that you were to have your share no matter what. If they're trying to cut you out, they're betraying his wishes." My throat tightened. "Would you be willing to testify?" She nodded firmly. "For my brother's memory, yes." Her support steadied me. I wasn't alone anymore. That night, I scanned every document, saving copies on multiple drives. One in my apartment, one in a safety deposit box, one entrusted to Aunt Clara. My siblings could burn my apartment to the ground and still not erase the truth. But evidence also came in whispers. I began monitoring Veronica's social media more carefully. Pictures of dress fittings, rehearsal dinners, champagne flutes clinking under chandeliers. In one photo, I noticed something chilling: my brother grinning, holding a folder that looked strikingly like the petitions. The caption read, "All set for the big day." They weren't hiding their crime. They were celebrating it. The fury inside me hardened into resolve. If they thought the wedding would be their victory lap, they were mistaken. It would be their downfall. Still, fear lingered. My mother called one evening, her tone sharp. "Stay out of this, Margaret. Veronica deserves her perfect day. Don't ruin it with your accusations." I bit back my anger. "You knew, didn't you?" Silence. Then the line went dead. Her silence was confirmation. My entire family had chosen greed over blood. And so I prepared the final piece of my plan, to walk into Veronica's wedding with the judge who held the power to decide it all. But what I didn't yet know was that someone inside the family already suspected I was coming, and they were planning to stop me. I knew I could not walk into that ballroom alone. I had the papers. I had Aunt Clara. But legal fights eat emotion and leave only record. I needed someone who translated truth into law. I needed someone who would stand in a courthouse and make the ink on their forged pages look like a confession. I called the only lawyer I trusted by reputation. Her name was Evelyn Grant. She handled family estates and fraud cases with a steady hand. Her office smelled of paper and coffee. She did not waste words. She did not need to. When I told her everything, every missing invitation, every petition, every doctored signature, she listened. Her face did not change. When I finished, she folded her fingers and set a pen on the table. "You did the right thing," she said. "Not by confronting them, by collecting. Forensically. You forced them to reveal themselves. That is evidence, not emotion." She laid out the path. First, she would file an emergency motion to place the disputed estate accounts under temporary protection. That would freeze any transfers. Second, she would subpoena the originals of the petitions and demand handwriting analysis. Third, she would arrange for a sworn affidavit from Aunt Clara about my father's expressed wishes. "Most of all," Evelyn added, "we do not let this become a whisper. They bet on shame and silence. We make this public at the right moment. When truth appears in public, lies shrink." I felt steadier hearing her. Strategy turned rage into something precise. Evelyn prepared documents. I signed where needed. She asked one question I had not expected. "Are you prepared to walk into the wedding with me?" I thought of the chandeliers, of Veronica's rehearsed smile, of the empty place at the table where my name should have been. I thought of the petitions that tried to erase my claim. I thought of my father's face. "Yes," I said. "If you will come." She agreed. Her voice was soft. "I will. But this is delicate. A courtroom and a celebration are different stages. We cannot treat them the same." She explained the public law trick we would use. The judge could be requested to sign an immediate temporary restraining order to prevent any transfers or legal changes. If we filed to the court the morning of the wedding and a judge issued a protective order, those at the event would find their plans suddenly frozen by law. It would be visible. It would be undeniable. The humiliation would be theirs in the light of witnesses. We would not lie or set a scene. We would show the truth the law already verified. The forged signatures. The notarized wills. The bank reports. The judge's order would be the instrument that made it impossible for them to continue. Still, Evelyn warned me of one thing. Family events are volatile. If they panic, they may try to stop you from entering. Security may be tight. They will have friends there who will defend them. I nodded. I had thought of that. I had rehearsed the walk in my head until my legs knew the steps. I planned my arrival carefully. A small car. A plain dress. No dramatic flourish. We would not storm in. We would arrive like truth itself, uninvited but rightful. I reached out to Aunt Clara to make her ready. She agreed to stand with me if needed. Grace, my neighbor and once a bridesmaid for Veronica, offered to be there as well. Small faces at the edges of the crowd who could speak if they had to. Evelyn asked about the judge. "We need someone impartial," she said. "Someone who will act quickly if the evidence supports it." She recommended a retired judge she respected. A woman named Judge Harper. She had no love for family scandals. She had a reputation for decisive rulings when fraud was clear. Judge Harper agreed to be present, she said, but in a capacity that would not be showy. She would be in the courthouse nearby, reachable. If we filed early, and the evidence was as strong as we believed, she could sign an emergency order that very afternoon. As the day approached, I kept my face gentle. My family noticed nothing. Veronica posted a photo of the cake. My mother fussed over place cards. My brother sent a text. "See you at 5. Don't be late." The weight of their casual cruelty lay in that brief message. They thought I might fail to appear. They thought I might cow to shame. On the morning of the wedding, Evelyn came to my apartment. She carried a slim folder with affidavits, notarized reports, the handwriting expert certification, and a typed motion. Her presence was calm authority. She reviewed each page with me. If the judge signs the restraining order, she said, they can no longer alter the deeds or accounts. Any attempt to touch assets will be punishable as contempt. My breath hitched. The plan was no longer abstract. It was about to become action. We left in separate cars. I wore a simple navy dress. No jewelry to call attention. Grace sat beside me, her hand warm. Aunt Clara followed in a taxi, ready with a notarized statement of my father's intentions. Evelyn drove to the courthouse to file. I drove to the venue. As I neared the grand ballroom, I saw the valet line, the dress trains, the flashing lights. 200 people prepared to celebrate. I pulled my coat tighter. I felt the papers in my bag like a hidden weight. Evelyn called me once, her voice steady. We filed. Judge Harper received the motion. She is reviewing the documents. Expect an answer soon. I walked to the venue entrance. The doorman looked at me without recognition. Security scanned bags. Bridesmaids flitted past like birds. I stepped forward, my heart steady. At the door, one of Veronica's friends reached out to stop me. You are not on the list, she said sharply. Behind her, someone closed the heavy door. I held up my hand and said simply, I have a right to be here. The friend's eyes flashed. She laughed, a small cruel sound. We'll see about that. Then her smile vanished when a messenger approached with a clipboard. The clipboard held a sheet stamped by the courthouse, an urgent order requiring the host to preserve all estate documents and to refrain from transfers pending court review. Everyone in the lobby looked up at the name on the stamp. The name was mine. The air in the lobby shifted the moment the courier handed over that stamped order. People craned their necks, whispers darted like sparks. The seal of the court glimmered under the overhead lights, and there in bold print was my name. The woman who had tried to block me faltered. She scanned the page, her face pale, then stepped aside without another word. I walked past her, every step measured, every breath steady. For the first time in years I was not invisible. Inside, the grand ballroom glowed. Crystal chandeliers spilled light over gold-trimmed tables. Music floated through the air, delicate and rehearsed. Guests laughed, glasses clinked, and Veronica's laughter rose above it all like a practiced melody. To anyone else it looked perfect. To me it looked like a stage. I found Evelyn waiting in the side hall. She carried her folder close, her eyes sharp, her voice calm. The order is signed, she whispered. For now they cannot touch the estate. The next step is to reveal the forgery. I nodded, my chest tight. Do we wait until the vows? Not yet, she said. We let them carry on unaware, until the moment they feel most secure. Then we cut the ground from beneath them. Aunt Clara joined us, clutching her statement, her lips pressed thin. Grace hovered at my side, ready to record, ready to speak if needed. We were a small army, but an army nonetheless. For days we had rehearsed this moment. Evelyn had mapped every possible outcome. What to do if they denied, if they shouted, if they tried to throw me out. She had even planned for silence, the kind of silence my mother had perfected, sharp enough to wound without words. Your role is simple, Evelyn reminded me. Stay calm. Speak only when asked. Let the evidence speak louder than you ever could. My fingers tightened around the strap of my purse. Inside were the certified copies, the handwriting analysis, the notarized will. Years of truth distilled into paper. I peered into the ballroom once more. Veronica glided in her gown, radiant in her false triumph. My brother poured drinks, his grin smug. My mother oversaw everything like a queen guarding her crown. None of them suspected that the celebration they built was already collapsing. But plans, no matter how careful, live in fragile glass. And the first crack appeared sooner than expected. One of the ushers approached, nervous. Excuse me, Miss Margaret, he said quietly. Your family is asking why you're here. I'm not happy. I almost laughed. Not happy. They had hidden my invitation. They had forged my signature. And yet they feared my presence more than anything else. Tell them, Evelyn instructed firmly, that Margaret has a right to be here, and she will remain until the ceremony ends. If they wish to contest it, they can speak with me. The usher nodded, visibly relieved, and retreated. For a moment I let myself breathe. The plan was working. The order had been delivered. The evidence was secured. The allies were steady. Every piece of the puzzle sat exactly where it needed to be. And yet, beneath the music and the chatter, I felt unease. My brother's eyes scanned the room too often. Veronica's smile twitched at the edges. My mother's laughter was brittle, breaking under the weight of something unsaid. They knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. They sensed the storm coming, even if they could not see its shape. Still, I reminded myself that was the essence of power. Letting them feel secure just long enough to pull the rug away. And then, just as the officiant stepped into the room, a second courier entered the ballroom. But this time the papers weren't mine. They were from my brother, his counterstrike filed that very morning. Evelyn's face darkened as she opened the envelope. "Margaret," she whispered. "They've accused you of fraud." The envelope Evelyn tore open felt heavier than paper. Her sharp eyes scanned the pages, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw a flicker of anger cross her calm features. "They filed this morning," she whispered, her voice clipped. "Your brother claims you falsified documents. He's trying to preempt you, accusing you of the very thing you uncovered." My stomach lurched. "Forgery? Against me?" Evelyn nodded grimly. "It's a classic pivot. If he can muddy the waters, make you look just as guilty, the judge may hesitate to act. He's desperate. But desperation can still do damage." The ballroom shimmered around us, oblivious. Veronica floated down the aisle, her gown glowing under the chandeliers. Guests leaned in with smiles, hands clasped, waiting for vows that meant nothing to me. My mother's face was radiant with pride. And me? I stood at the edge of their perfect picture, holding evidence they thought buried, facing lies they had sharpened into weapons. Grace leaned close. "What do we do?" Evelyn folded the papers briskly. "We adapt. Truth is still on our side. We have notarized reports, certified handwriting analysis, sworn affidavits. His accusations are paper thin, but if he screams them loud enough, some will believe. That's why timing is critical. We must reveal not just proof, but context. You didn't come here to shout. You came here to expose." Her calm steadied me, but unease lingered. My brother had always been cunning, twisting shadows into daggers. If he was cornered enough to file false charges, what else was he planning? The officiant's voice rose, calling for silence as Veronica and her groom joined hands. The vows began, rehearsed words floating like silk. Guests dabbed at tears. A violin sang in the background. And in that stillness, Evelyn slipped the folded accusations into her bag. "Stay steady," she whispered. "We will not move until the moment is undeniable." I nodded, though my pulse pounded. Halfway through the ceremony, I caught my brother's eyes across the ballroom. He wasn't watching the vows. He was watching me. His smirk was thin, tight, brittle. The look of a man who thought he had caged me. I turned back toward the aisle, lifting my chin. If he believed I would break, he was wrong. Still, the tension thickened with each passing minute. The officiant declared Veronica and her husband bound. Applause rippled, champagne glasses lifted. The ballroom rang with celebration. That was when Evelyn gave the smallest nod. The time had come. She rose, her voice clear and firm. "Your Honor," she said, addressing the judge seated discreetly among the guests. "Before this celebration continues, there are matters of law that cannot be ignored." Gasps scattered like broken glass. Heads turned. Murmurs surged. Veronica froze, her smile cracking. My brother shot to his feet. "This is outrageous. This is her stunt. She's the fraud." The judge's eyes narrowed, calm but piercing. Evelyn opened her folder, drawing out the certified handwriting analysis. "We have evidence of forged signatures submitted to the court. And," she paused, pulling the morning's accusations from her bag, "we also have an 11th-hour filing by Daniel Whitmore, attempting to accuse Margaret of the very crime he committed. The timing speaks for itself." The judge motioned for the papers. Guests leaned in, shock spreading in waves. My mother's face drained of color. Veronica's jewels glittered, her hands clutching the edge of her gown. And me, I stood quiet but steady as the truth unfolded. But just as the judge began reading, my brother lunged forward, his voice booming through the hall. "She's lying. I have proof she forged Father's will herself." He pulled a folder from under his chair, slamming it onto the table. Gasps erupted. My heart clenched. Another layer of their trap had been set. The ballroom erupted into gasps as my brother slammed his folder onto the table. His face gleamed with triumph, his voice booming loud enough to shake the chandeliers. "She forged father's will," he bellowed, jabbing a finger at me. "She faked his signature to cut us out, and now she's hiding behind this lawyer to protect herself." Guests murmured, their heads whipping between us. Some believed the show of confidence. Others stared in disbelief. Veronica clutched her groom's arm, her eyes flashing with fury, certain that her stage had been ruined. The judge raised a hand. "Silence." His tone was sharp, cutting through the noise. He motioned for the folder. My brother hesitated, then shoved it forward with trembling hands, trying to mask it as bravado. Evelyn's gaze hardened as she took the folder and handed it directly to the judge. He flipped through the pages, brow furrowing. I held my breath. My brother's trap was simple. Drown the truth under false papers, create doubt, turn suspicion back on me. But Evelyn was ready. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear. "I anticipated this possibility. That is why we obtained certified handwriting analysis before today. Not only for the petitions but also for the will itself." She lifted another envelope, sealed and stamped. "This contains the expert's sworn report. It confirms the will is authentic, signed by Samuel Whitmore himself, witnessed and notarized properly. And," she paused, pulling a second report, "it also confirms that these documents," she tapped my brother's folder, "are crude forgeries." A collective gasp swept through the guests. The judge's eyes darkened as he studied the seal. "Admissible. This court recognizes the expert certification." My brother's face turned a dangerous shade of red. "She planned this. She's been scheming for months." I finally rose, my voice steady, cutting across his panic. "No. I've been waiting for months. Waiting as you mocked me, as you excluded me, as you stole from me. I didn't forge anything. You forged my name, you lied to the court, and now you dare to lie here, in front of all these witnesses." The judge held up a hand. "Enough." He set aside my brother's folder with a sharp motion, then lifted Evelyn's documents. "The evidence is clear. Fraudulent filings were made against Margaret Whitmore. Protective orders will remain in place, and further investigation will proceed. Any attempt to transfer or alter estate assets is hereby prohibited." The room fell into stunned silence. Guests whispered, shock etched on their faces. "They forged her name," someone murmured. "At her sister's wedding," another whispered. Laughter rippled, not joyful laughter but bitter, disbelieving. Veronica's groom shifted uncomfortably, glancing at her as if seeing her differently for the first time. My mother's hand trembled against the table, her proud mask crumbling as the reality sank in. Evelyn closed her folder, her gaze fierce. "This is not a family disagreement, Your Honor. This is fraud, perpetrated knowingly. The timing of their counterclaim proves intent to mislead. We ask for sanctions." The judge's voice carried finality. "Sanctions will be considered. For now, the truth has been made clear." He glanced around the glittering ballroom. "This is not a stage for deceit. This is a stage for justice." I turned slowly, letting my eyes sweep across the room. Faces that had once dismissed me now watched in awe or shame or disbelief. I wasn't the forgotten sister anymore. I was the one who stood while lies fell. I reached into my purse and placed the scarf my mother had mocked years ago onto the table. Its green fabric caught the light. "This," I said softly, "is the last time you laugh at me. From this day forward, every laugh will be on you." The weight of my words landed like stone. My brother sagged into his chair, sweat glistening. Veronica covered her face. My mother lowered her eyes. But just as relief began to settle in my chest, a voice cut through the room. It was Veronica, her tone sharp, venomous. "You think this is over, Margaret? You may have the judge today, but you will never have this family again." The chandelier still glimmered overhead, but the room beneath it was no longer the same. The applause that should have followed vows had turned into whispers of shock, gasps of betrayal, and the sharp crack of illusions shattering. Veronica's words, "You will never have this family again," hung in the air like smoke. Guests shifted uncomfortably, their once joyous faces now tight with unease. Some rose discreetly, slipping away as though afraid of being caught in the scandal. Others whispered openly, phones already buzzing as news spread beyond the ballroom. The wedding of the year had turned into a courtroom spectacle. Veronica stood rigid, her gown heavy around her, jewels trembling on her neck. Her groom's hand hovered at her back, hesitant, unsure. His eyes searched hers, but there was no warmth in them now, only doubt. My brother slumped in his chair, his face red with fury, but his bravado drained. Sweat darkened his collar. He muttered curses under his breath, avoiding the judge's gaze. And my mother sat frozen. Her hands clutched her glass so tightly I thought it would shatter. For years she had been the orchestrator, the matriarch, the one whose silence could slice sharper than words. Now she looked smaller. Her power wilted under the weight of exposure. I remained standing, calm and deliberate. Evelyn's presence beside me was a shield. Aunt Clara's steady nod was a promise that I wasn't alone. The judge rose. "This matter will continue in court," he declared, his voice echoing across the marble. "But the evidence presented today leaves little doubt. The attempts to defraud Margaret Whitmore are documented and verified. Until a final ruling, protective measures remain in place." The gavel of his words struck harder than any piece of wood. The ballroom had no answer. As he left, silence crashed down. Then the fallout began. Guests began turning, approaching me with hushed voices. "I'm so sorry, Margaret," one cousin whispered. "I had no idea." Another neighbor shook her head. "They always underestimated you." "Not anymore." Each word landed not as pity, but as quiet vindication. The same people who had laughed at me in the past now looked at me with respect or fear. Veronica's groom finally spoke, his voice low. "Veronica, is this true? Did you know?" Her face twisted. "Of course not. This is all Margaret's performance." But he didn't believe her. His hand slipped from her back. His eyes darted to me, then to the guests, whispering. Doubt had taken root, and doubt is poison at a wedding. My brother tried to rise, slamming his palm on the table. "This isn't finished. You think you've won, Margaret? You'll regret this." His voice cracked, carrying more desperation than authority. Evelyn stepped forward, her tone firm. "Threats will not help you, Daniel. The court has already seen enough. Every word you speak now only deepens the hole you've dug." The murmurs swelled, spreading like ripples in water. Laughter too bitter, mocking laughter aimed not at me but at them. Guests who once idolized my family now shook their heads in disbelief. And still my mother said nothing. Until finally she stood. Her voice was quiet but sharp, slicing the air. "You may have the papers, Margaret. You may have the law. But you have destroyed us. You are no daughter of mine." The words landed harder than any blow. I stared at her, my chest tightening. A lifetime of longing for her approval evaporated in an instant. She had chosen her pride over truth, her lies over me. I let the silence stretch before I answered. "No, Mother. I didn't destroy us. You destroyed us when you chose greed over love. When you chose silence over justice. I only revealed it." Gasps swept through the room. Some nodded at my words. Others bowed their heads. My mother's face hardened, but she could not deny it. And as I turned to leave, my phone buzzed in my purse. A single message lit the screen from an unknown number. "You think tonight was your victory. Tomorrow we take back everything." Morning light poured through my curtains, but it did not bring peace. My phone buzzed endlessly, vibrating across the nightstand like a living thing. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of messages, headlines stacking one after another. Whitmore wedding turns into legal showdown. Sister walks in with judge. Fraud allegations rock family. Forgery scandal exposed during vows. Clips were everywhere. Veronica frozen mid-vow, my brother shouting accusations, my calm words standing against the storm. Someone had recorded me laying the scarf on the table and saying, "From this day forward, every laugh will be on you." That moment had gone viral, replayed millions of times. I sat at my kitchen table, untouched coffee cooling beside me. The scarf lay across my lap, its soft fabric grounding me in a world that suddenly seemed too loud. Evelyn called early, her voice brisk but triumphant. The judge issued a protective order on all estate accounts. They can't touch a penny. And the handwriting expert certification is circulating. Your brother's counterclaim is already collapsing. Will they face charges? I asked. They will, she said. Fraud. Forgery. Contempt. It won't be quick, but it will come. For now you are safe. They cannot erase you anymore. Her certainty steadied me, but the envelope from the night before still gnawed at me. The message, "Tomorrow we take back everything," echoed in my mind. Grace arrived with newspapers, dropping them onto my table. Every front page screamed the same story: my family's fall. Veronica's glamorous smile contrasted against captions of betrayal. My brother's furious face splashed across headlines with the word fraud in bold. My mother's stony silence immortalized in photos. Neighbors texted me with cautious support. Distant relatives called in disbelief. Even old classmates I hadn't spoken to in years sent messages of awe. But not all words were kind. Anonymous emails dripped with venom. Greedy witch. You destroyed your own family. Enjoy your money, traitor. By noon, television crews were camped outside my building. I stayed inside, curtains drawn, listening to the hum of their voices below. Then came the call I hadn't expected, Veronica's groom. His voice was hesitant, quiet. Margaret, I wanted to apologize. I didn't know. If I had, I never would have stood there in silence. Do you still plan to marry her? I asked. He hesitated too long. I don't know. Then softer. But I know you were the only honest one in that room. When the call ended, I sat still, realizing the ripple of truth was larger than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about property or papers. It was about trust. And the lies my family built had poisoned everything, even Veronica's marriage before it began. By evening, the fallout spread further. Banks called to confirm protective measures. Reporters dug deeper into the estate. My brother's business partners began withdrawing. Veronica's so-called friends unfollowed her, one by one, as if cutting ties would erase their association with scandal. And my mother? She left a single message on my voicemail. Her voice was brittle. You've destroyed us, Margaret. I hope you're proud. I replayed it twice. Not once did she say she was sorry. That night, as I folded the scarf back into its drawer, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't threats or headlines. It was an email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "Your father left more than they ever told you." Attached was a single scanned page, half a letter signed in my father's handwriting. The words chilled me. If anything happens to me, Margaret must know about the second trust. My hands trembled as I read it again. There was more. A hidden inheritance, concealed even deeper than I imagined. And if it was true, the war was only beginning. The email sat glowing on my screen like a doorway into another world. If anything happens to me, Margaret must know about the second trust. My father's handwriting curved across the page, unmistakable, steady. He had left me more than I ever knew. I forwarded it to Evelyn immediately. Within an hour, she called back, her voice brimming with restrained energy. It's authentic. I compared the signature to notarized documents. This isn't a forgery. Your father anticipated their betrayal. He protected you in ways you didn't even realize. Tears pricked my eyes. For years I thought my silence was weakness, my patience a flaw. But my father had trusted me with more than money. He had trusted me with foresight, with strength. The coming weeks were a blur of hearings and filings. The second trust was revealed. Its assets secured under my name. Millions my siblings never knew about. Untouchable, preserved for me alone. Each time we appeared in court, their lies shrank smaller, their voices weaker. My brother avoided my gaze. Veronica's marriage dissolved before the ink on her license dried. My mother never spoke my name again. The world had seen them for who they were. And it had seen me too, not as the forgotten sister, but as the one who refused to be erased. One evening after the final ruling, I stood outside the courthouse, the cool wind tugging at my coat. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. "Margaret, how do you feel?" they shouted. I lifted my chin, speaking clear, steady words. "I feel free." They tried to bury me in lies, but the truth rose higher. My father's trust was never about wealth. It was about belief. He knew I could carry it even when no one else did. That night I returned home. My apartment was quiet, but it no longer felt small. On the table lay the green scarf folded neatly. Once it was the symbol of their mockery. Now it was my banner of victory. I draped it over my shoulders not with shame but with pride. I poured a glass of wine, sat by the window, and watched the city lights flicker. For the first time I allowed myself to breathe fully, to feel the weight of freedom settle into me. Because this was never just about money. It was about dignity. About reclaiming the voice they tried to strip away. About proving that silence can be strategy, and patience can become the sharpest blade. They thought they could laugh at me forever. But in the end, the world laughed at them. If my story reached you, let it remind you. Silence is not weakness. Betrayal does not define you. What matters is what you build in its shadow, and how you rise from it. Subscribe for more stories like mine. Stories of betrayal turned into strength, of revenge shaped into justice. Because none of us are truly powerless. Not when we know the truth.